Welcome, everybody, to another episode of MC Fireside Chats. My name is Brian Searl with Insider Perks and Modern Campground. Excited to be back here for a first week of July episode. It's Canada Day. It's a holiday for me, but I'm here working with you guys because where else would I be? On a great podcast with great guests and great things to talk about. So excited to be back here for July 1st, 2026. We're a couple days away from an American holiday as well, so we'll get some updates on that. So we've got a recurring guest here, Scott Barr. Briefly let you introduce yourself in a second, Scott, Simon Neal, and Phil Ingrassia, and then we got special guests Tina Severson and Lori Severson, who are both got their hands in all kinds of things around the industry as always. And then we've got Ward as well. So let's just go around the room and briefly just introduce everybody. We're going to start with our recurring guest, Scott. There you
go. Scott Barr, Karen Consulting Group. We're market research and analysis.
Whoever wants to go.
What's that?
I said whoever wants to go next. Feel free to.
I'm Phil Ingrassia, President, RV Dealers Association, U.S.
Welcome, Phil. Simon?
Simon, founder and CEO of Camp Map. We help outdoor hospitality businesses and groups improve marketing and guest experience with premium digital maps.
Welcome back, Simon. Appreciate you. Tina and Lori?
Tina, I'll let you go first, and I'll fill in where you leave off.
Okay. So Lori and I are with Severson Associates. We're an association management company that oversees the Wisconsin Association of Campground Owners, KOA Owners Association, and then we also have the Campground Owners Expo show that we put on ourselves in Branson. So basically all industry related. And then when Lori's, not busy and hanging out and doing nothing, she's also running her own campground in Wisconsin.
Awesome. Welcome to both of you. Lori, do you have anything she missed?
No, I don't think so, except for we also run the Gilbert Brown Foundation. So he's a former Green Bay Packer player, and so that's what we do in our spare time.
Awesome. Well, welcome both of you. And last but not least, Ward. Can we hear you, Ward? I don't know if it's me or if it's Ward, but everybody else looks like they're moving except Ward. So
yeah,
we'll see if he comes
back. A little frozen.
Okay, cool. So generally how we do this is we'll typically start the show and we'll save our recurring guests, Simon, Scott, and Phil. Is there anything that you guys feel has come across your desk since the last time we were all on a show together, I believe at the beginning of June? Anything that's come across your desk that you think is important that we should be talking about in the industry?
Well, we had some, for our U.S. RV shipments and sales, we've got some new kind of revised 2026 prognostications that came out last month. And, the industry, it's no secret in the U.S., has been pretty flat to down single digits, throughout 2026. And that pattern is going to catch up with us through the year. It looks like we're going to be right around 310,000 units. Earlier this year, they were projecting 350,000. But the war, gas prices, consumer sentiment, it's kind of been a perfect storm to kind of, lower those projections through the end of the year. So that's kind of where we are now. I was working on something on used units for our membership magazine, and I did. There is some good news in the used sector, both on the wholesale side and the sales side. It's driving affordability issues and things like that. So for RV dealers, used sales are holding up. New is probably going to be down probably 10% for the year.
And just for our audience to set the expectation, like this is not a problem with the RV industry. This is a macroeconomic picture, right? Like everything is in weird shape right now, right?
Right, absolutely. It's consumer sentiment is what the industry's traditionally followed as far as new unit sales go. And in the U.S., consumer sentiment numbers, they're creeping back up a little bit with some of the war news that has come out, but still not ideal. And of course, we're missing a big chunk of the season in May and June, where typically we do higher number of sales. So right now, they're not thinking that we're going to be able to pick it up enough in the third and fourth quarter of the year.
Scott, what do you think about when you look at data? Like, you're obviously the big data guy, right? What do you think about when you look at the different data, both from a macroeconomic picture and from RV industry and from all of it put together? Take it wherever you want.
Yeah, I think to build on what Phil was just saying, that we did, the early season stuff when people are making a lot of their plans, at least their mindset, gets in that mode during that time, even if they don't even lock down their plans 100%. Their mind is taking them somewhere. Their intent sometimes is taking them in a direction, whether it's buying an RV or taking a trip. And it felt like everybody's minds were put on pause for a bit. And, I wonder, and, hopefully we'll have some research coming out soon that we can verify or not. Some of this is that I wonder what the difference will be between the set of consumers who were originally planning on purchasing an RV, who said, I'm going to wait. Will they continue? Will they still do that? And what percent of the business is more spontaneous, where someone doesn't plan well in advance and they just one day get up and say, I'm going to buy an RV. Now, I know that's probably not huge. And Phil, maybe the answer to that. I kind of, as I was saying that, I wished I'd actually measured that in one of my studies. But it does make me wonder about that. Will there be pent-up demand? Will they wait till the next cycle of next year?
Phil, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, our studies have shown that typically, because it's a discretionary purchase, an RV, people take their time. It's not like a car where it's coming off lease or you're looking at a big repair bill. Typically, people will, spend 3 to 6 months looking before they make that purchase. And of course, with some of the interest rate issues, the war issues, the gas price issues, all that is kind of put things on hold. I will say, historically, used sales are showing that there is demand there, but it's affordability factor. So used values are holding up. That typically portends that new sales will catch up eventually. So we will see a bump in new sales probably in 2027 because it's just, I think what Scott's getting at is there's a lot of people just on the sidelines right now.
Sorry for any background noise if you guys can hear it. Apparently my lawn care people decided to come right during the show and are screaming just like 2 feet away from me. So that's fun. It was garbage truck 1 week and I just can't sit outside for the life of me. So what do we think, Phil, is the outlook here? Like, I know there's lots of things that could change, and there are things that we have hopeful that will change, right? Like maybe the war is winding down. Depends on the day. I guess you look at the headlines. But maybe the war is winding down. But generally speaking, if you take out the war out of everything else, are we optimistic for the way the economy is heading into 2027? I know this is very early, and you really don't have an idea, but just your general gut.
Yeah, typically what we'll see is after, this is an off-year election, so we'll have the election kind of get settled. That should tee us up for a better 2027. It's just really hard to know right now because, the war news changes sometimes daily, and it has throughout the spring and early summer. And so, we just need some consistency in some of these macroeconomic things that are, buffeting us a little bit right now. But I think in general, when you look at what Thor Industries is saying, Winnebago, in their public statements, Camping World, some of the other big companies, they are looking for a rebound in 2027.
Okay, good. Well, we'll continue to be hopeful then. Welcome back, Ward. Hopefully you can hear us now. Can you hear us? All right, maybe Ward can hear us. Can't hear you yet. Simon or Scott, did you have anything on your minds that you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, I have a couple of articles I read this last week that are really promising, actually. So there's 2 sets of data that came in, one for Croatia and one for Spain. So the Croatian one, is kind of general hotels and outdoor hospitality combined. But the results from January to May are actually up 5% in total arrivals from last year and 7% in overnight stays. So this is kind of, I don't think 2 months ago anybody would have said that, but it's really come in strong now and it's looking positive. And then the Spanish one is even better, actually. This is focused completely on outdoor hospitality. The data's come from the Spanish Federation of Campsites, and they're indicating a record-breaking summer. So occupancy rates close to 90%, with August almost full capacity for kind of glamping, bungalow-style accommodation, which is proving really popular. So this is great news, a great signal. And they're actually seeing an increase of 10% in advanced bookings. So again, like a few months ago, I think none of this was expected. It's coming in strong now. People are planning for the summer, planning for the holidays, and this nice weather is probably helping at the same time. So that's two pretty good signals, at least from Europe, that the summer is actually going to be pretty positive for the industry.
Do you have a sense, or is there any data that it might be just because Europeans are staying closer to home in Europe this summer? Because I know the same thing is happening in Canada. That's why I asked. Like, our industry is doing pretty well this summer, all data points that we've heard. But that's also because they're not going to the United States like they were in the past.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting that for sure there's another study in the long haul travel that's kind of flat or down. So I think you can have the regular customers from Europe who are going camping as usual, but then you're probably having this other part of the sector who would normally fly away, who are now going glamping. The same resorts, but they're going into the cabins, they're going into mobile homes. So that could be it. I don't have the figures to back it up, but that's probably a pretty good assessment of that push.
And is the heat impacting anything in Europe?
I don't know. I know what he mentioned. They were getting some feedback from their customers, but for sure people are just not used to it. It's a bit of a struggle sometimes, but I don't think it would impact travel directly. I think it's just a bit of a hardship.
I don't know what country it was from. I saw a video on X that somebody shared. I wasn't actively looking for it, but a video of people hanging out in IKEA for the air conditioning in Europe somewhere. I can't remember what country it was. It was all just lounging around IKEA. Because the air conditioning, for those of you who don't know, is not as big in Europe as it is in the United States.
Yeah, especially Northern Europe, it's very rare. So everybody really struggles when the temperature goes up a bit.
Yeah. Do we have Ward back yet or no? Can you hear us, Ward? Or can we hear you? I guess it's a better question. Not yet? Okay.
Ward is either stoic or frozen.
I think he's frozen. Poor guy.
Lori and Tina, what are you guys seeing this summer so far? I guess let's start with Lori because you own your own campground.
I do. I would say that our campers are definitely booking later. A lot of last minute bookings. And I think the one thing is that they really expect that premier experience. They're looking at reviews a lot closer. They're looking at feedback from other campers, their friends, family, that kind of thing. And then I think it's important for campground owners to make sure that we're using every square of revenue base so that we can offer them what they might like to do. They do tend to be spending more once you get them here. So that's I think that's a big piece of the puzzle.
Okay, so all things are good at Lori's campground, is what we're hearing.
They are, and pretty much in Wisconsin.
Okay, that was my follow-up question. So you already knew. You're too smart for me.
Yeah.
So, okay. And there's no difference with like what we're hearing in some of the other industry on a macro level. Obviously, there are micro pockets that are doing wonderful in the United States. We've got a lot of clients who are up 7-8%. We've got some that are flat. We've got some that are down. But mostly the long-term stays are solid or even up in a lot of places. And then the short-term transients are a little iffy. But you're not seeing any of that? Pretty much holding steady in Wisconsin? Or
I think the big thing is the booking part of it, is where they are booking way more last minute. We definitely had a soft June, just weather based. But boy, it picked up towards the end. And I think that really made a difference. And like I said, the big thing was not necessarily just overnight camping, per se, but I think the spending habits, once they get here, they seemed like they still had the money to spend and wanted to spend it. The seasonal camping, I think, is still going very strong. We haven't seen a lot of recess in that at all. But I do think that all of a sudden, especially in Wisconsin, everybody kind of perked up and said, "Oh, you know what? I think I maybe better do some shows this winter, and I better, start putting my marketing back together and some of those kinds of things." Where we may have had it out, I'm not going to say easy, but we may have had it similar, if you will. Now, I believe you have to work at it a little bit. You have to make sure that you have all your ducks in a row and that you are definitely, getting your themed weekends out there, what makes you different out there. You're really working to attract that customer, and you're making sure that guest experience is great. I think at the campgrounds that are, I would tell you that is the biggest thing that we see, is that guest experience is lacking once they get there. And boy, does that make a difference in the world. People just don't want to spend top dollar for experience. I mean, they want to be
not even but the same thing that they get everywhere else, right?
Right.
Something different needs to be in the mix.
Yep.
And
what's
what that
attracting them?
It's for everybody, right? Scott, you and I have had conversations about this. Like, generally, what is your thought, Scott? I know you can touch on experiences, but also you and I have had conversations about gas prices going up. Maybe it's a boon for our industry. There's a certain period where it might not be a boon for our industry and it's negative. Now gas prices have fallen. But you and I have kind of talked about, like, maybe it's too late for the consumer to change their behavior, but maybe we're wrong, and maybe it's going better than we thought about, at least in Wisconsin, right? Based on Lori's anecdote. So what do you think of all this?
I feel like, as we've talked about for the last few months, is that the intent is there, and we see that. We don't see this huge drop off. I mean, it's almost like you would expect to see people saying, "Yeah, I'm just not into it," or it's like I'm just not going to go. So to me, it feels like if they can get out, if they can make it there, they're going to do it. I feel like, what Lori was just talking about in terms of the experience too, is like they're willing to pay as long as what they get matches the price.
Right.
It's like they just need to match. It's like they want to get. I did a talk a couple weeks ago, but I called it a 200-person focus group. It was all RVers, and it ended up being like, I don't know, an old Phil Donahue show where I was walking around with the microphone, and everybody was offering feedback and just solving each other's problems. But what I heard was a lot of optimism in the room, but they kept going back to, it's like, as one woman said, and I really liked what she said. She goes, "I just want to know what I'm paying for, but I also want to know, I don't want to know exactly what I'm getting. I want to know what I'm not getting as well." And, I liked how they flipped that a little bit. And that seemed to be, there are a lot of heads nodding in the room, a lot of people agreeing with that. So that's what they're looking for. They're going to look at that price point, and then they're going to find a place that matches that price point more than anything. So it seems to me that the consumer, the guest, is being a little bit more discriminating these days. And again, you mentioned earlier the idea of reading more reviews. The reviews are big. The pictures, by the way, a lot of them are skeptical of pictures now. It's getting that way. Anyway. The pictures are still important, but there's a little skepticism there, just on the pictures anyway. But just the access to information and what they have. And so they feel like they're making better decisions. The industry overall, I feel like, we've done a bunch of research on this too. The idea of risk in booking, that we've seen a decline in that the guest, the person booking has less risk when they're trying to book their campsite. And I know that there's a lot of talk about that, especially in camping, that it is more risky than booking a hotel room. Yep. But like 3 times as risky. And yet
just to clarify, because it's not standardized is what you're talking about, right?
Right, exactly. Correct.
Mhm, mhm.
So, the guest sometimes doesn't, they're not 100% sure. But they book a room at the Hilton, they pretty much know what they're getting.
Right.
They
Right.
book a room at a place a campsite at a place they've never been. There's a little bit of trepidation there. So, but again, we're seeing the desire, the weather. Obviously, I'm in Maine, and our heat index is over 100. They're saying 110, maybe tomorrow. But if you're in Boston, it's even worse. So we've actually seen a bigger volume in the area where I'm sitting right now already this week. People started leaving the Boston area to come up here. I stay in contact with the local campgrounds and businesses just to see how they're doing. And so we've already seen an uptick in this area because people are coming up to go to the lakes and the rivers and everything to cool down. So for us, it's been a bit of a benefit. I think once we hit the weekend, it'll be even better. It's supposed to cool a little bit.
And Brian, don't get me wrong. It's definitely good operators have to have their heads on straight for sure. And it really does. Environment is not conducive to tired sometimes operators that don't maybe look at their information on a daily or weekly basis kind of thing. So I think it's very, very important to recognize that some of how your numbers look has got to do with you
For sure, yeah. And
as an
Scott and
individual owner.
and also your marketing too, right? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you.
No, 100%. No, 100%, Brian, and that's what I was getting at. You have to really, I feel like you have to really feel that, like in the beginning, like you had to start this in January
Mhm.
and say, oh boy, this is a tougher year with some of these things, and
Right.
and our themes have to be more, our theme weekends have to be more over the top than they have been in the past. And I think there was a small period of time when people thought after COVID, especially owners, they were like, oh, okay, hey, maybe this will work out just great. We could just have them 10 feet apart and let them do their own thing and life will be good. Well, that is not how it works. They want that experience. They don't mind paying, but they want a high-end experience. And the payoff, the win or lose, is when you look at that little kid's face and they're looking up at mom or dad or grandma and grandpa, and they're giving them that smile of approval. What it takes once you get that smile and that nod, that's your payback. That says, okay, we made it, we've got it.
Well, and there's two sides here to marketing, right? Like Scott and I were going to talk about this on Outwire, and then we ended up deciding to cancel today's show because we both were too busy, and it's a holiday for me. So we're going to do it next week. We're going to do a deep dive into marketing. And one of the things that I've wanted to talk about for a while is that disconnect between, like, I consider adding theme weekends and stuff like that part of the operational experience that can lead into and inform your marketing to make it better. But what you're doing is improving the on-the-ground experience that makes your marketing better because you're telling the truth. Whereas I feel like there's a lot of owners who are just jumping into marketing maybe for the first time, head first, thinking like, just give me business. And then what ends up happening is the end result of the experience is not always consistent, or not what is perhaps portrayed or conceived or perceptualized, is that a word? Perceived by the campground guest on the website. And so then that leads to the disconnect, and it loops into the uncertainty that Scott was talking about it's not always the same as the hotel, 3 times more unlikely. I think some of that is still people just don't have quite that grasp or polish of marketing that the hotel industry does. In addition
100%. Because it's got to be the truth. I don't know if Tina probably remember this, but one of my nephews was into dragons at one time, and so we wanted to take him to the Dells. It was during the winter, so we took him to the Dells and said, "Oh my gosh, this is going to be the greatest thing! This is such a huge dinosaur. He's going to get such a kick out of this." He's 7 years old, and when he got there, he was taller than the dinosaur. So all of a sudden, that it was like, okay, so much for this. It's just like not what I had, perceived, and that was a big letdown. And that first impression, when that first thing goes sour, you got a lot of making up to do, So it's hard to come back from some of that. So you're absolutely right. And as campground owners, we do a lot of fake it till you make it. Let's throw this together, and we'll put it in the brochure, and we'll make it happen when it comes time. And that's not always the best program.
especially as we move into this new generations, right, Scott? Like we have some data on this.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. There's definitely a difference in how they shop, how they pick where to stay, and whether or not they'll come back is it's kind of all up in the air at this point. But yeah, the youngest generation is a little bit more fickle, but they also they're a little less likely to respond to kind of a lot of traditional messaging and approaches. We've been doing a lot of work with this group, especially the low engaged group. The people that only take like 1 or 2 trips a year, and
Right.
what they want is they want things to be a little bit more self-directed. They don't want it to be really intense. They want to kind of say, you gotta have the offerings there, and then they'll decide when
Yes.
they get there. And it's the same thing with socialization. They aren't necessarily they are less social. I'll just say that straight up. However, it needs to be qualified that they're a little bit more picky in their socialization. I mean, okay, as I mentioned earlier, I know you two are from Wisconsin. I'm from Northern Michigan, and there everybody just meets everybody. You just walk up and say, "Howdy, where are you from?"
Yeah.
Oh, I know someone from Detroit. It's like there's only a few million people there, but hey, it doesn't matter. Gen Z is more along the lines of, I don't want that.
Right.
I want to have fewer, but I want them to be a little bit more meaningful, a little bit more in depth. So it's a very different group. It's just a very different group. It's really, really fascinating. And we have a lot of work to do to keep them going, to bring them in, to get them buying RVs, Phil, and to get them staying at your campgrounds more than once or an extra night. It's possible, and it's going to be slow, but I feel like it's very achievable. I feel much more positive. I always tell people last fall, I did a couple sessions for a class for a university in California. They were doing a segment, their architecture class on glamping, and so at the end of it, I asked the class of about it's close to 30 students how many had ever been camping, and not one hand went up.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I expected it to be low, but I didn't expect it to be none.
None.
And,
Yeah.
I was like, all right, here's our challenge. Right here it is, right in front of me.
I think you're right on with that, Scott. Yeah, I think you're right on with that, Scott. I think that so many times, especially with that particular group, they want to have a lot to choose from, but they want to make the choice, So some of them are very creative. They want to go ahead and do their own thing, and some of them not so much. They really want something that's more guided and okay, I just take the kids here and this happens. I just do this and this happens, So it really is about having the variety to offer those clients, so that no matter which of those areas they fall into, they can be happy and have those happy kiddos.
We want the big dinosaurs.
Yes.
I mean,
They're
to be
huge.
clear, like the smaller raptor dinosaurs are kind of cool anyway, right? Like they're about my height, and they're raptors.
Yeah.
They're deadly.
They're not so cool when you're expecting this 7-foot dragon kind of dinosaur.
So that's expectations, though. That leads.
It
back to our point,
is. It is. And I think it goes from, the parents' expectations to the child's expectations. And bottom line, the child's is the one that matters.
Yeah, for sure.
Mom and dad, grandma and grandpa, they'll pay the price as long as they get the payback. If the receipt is in that smile that says you made my lifetime venture.
Absolutely. Phil, do you have any data on how the differences are between like the RV industry and what more of the younger generation are wanting, or is it the same that boomers want? Or
well, I think that one of the things is if you look at product types, okay, 15 years ago, the product type mix is a lot different than it is now. if you would have told me 10 years ago that van campers were going to outsell Class A motorhomes, I wouldn't have believed.
Yeah.
But look at what's going on with the van camper market. Look at even the Type C market.
Yeah.
We're getting to see much more of a European style in these newer motorhomes that Thor, Winnebago, Forest River are coming out with. Much more drivable, much more maneuverable, and less, I guess, less intimidating, I guess, is what I'm
Right.
getting at. So, and then we've got the off-road, the more rugged travel trailer segment that's coming in. So all these people, the younger buyers, that's well documented, but they are also pushing the manufacturers. And to their credit, I think the manufacturers are much more flexible and doing better research on what meeting the market where it is versus trying to shove big fifth wheels down everybody.
So is this a combination of, or isolated to, the generation and the economy, or is it a blend of people are trading down because they're a little bit more affordable, but also they're Gen Z, Gen A, whatever, younger millennials?
Well, we talk about this K-shaped economy, right? Van campers are not cheap. They are more expensive than Type Cs now. So, I mean, you can buy, you can spend anywhere from 120 to 300,000 on a van camper these days. So it isn't that they're more affordable. They're just they're meeting the need of this younger buyer who wants maybe a little bit more venturesome, isn't just going to park in one spot for an extended period. They're going to be out and about, and I think that's a big part of the van camper, pretty much explosion we've seen in the last 5-6 years.
Which generally means then we can infer that probably is a selection that they want and probably won't change in the near future or even the longer term future. So then how does that impact, and whoever wants to answer this, right? Maybe Scott, maybe somebody else, but how does that impact how we build campgrounds? Because we've had conversations with Simon before about how European campsites are designed for those smaller type campers already and don't require as much build cost to put into them. So does it change how we design campgrounds? Not now, but if it continues for 5 years?
I think it's sorry. I think it's the van campers are just the new generation who introduces himself in our business, but buying vans and as you just said, expensive vans. We see that they don't come into our campsites. So they only start coming to our campsites when they have children or when they are retired. And so this is when they buy their RV or their bigger motorhomes. And so I don't think we have to reshape the campsites for the camper van guests. In our case, we do it all the time. We to attract the more aged and biggest family to attract them. So for us, I don't think the van camper guests are a niche for us, but I think they are the future.
What do you think, Scott, of the American market?
I feel like for quite a while, the campgrounds were really indexing high on pull-through sites, and because the demand was definitely there. I'm feeling like that might, and other people might be able to offer something on this. It feels like that might be declining a little bit, but not because it's not just necessarily because of the size of the RV. It's how they operate the RV. It's the ability people.
Yes.
I've heard from campground owners who say that they're big pull-through sites, which are designed for Class A's with a tow behind or a fifth wheel, are someone coming in with a Tacoma and a small a towable behind it, a micro towable even, and so anyway, it feels like there's a little bit of that adjustment going on, because we also know that one of the barriers to RV ownership is the ability to operate them, and in the past, for us who have been around a while, we know that in RV there used to be this in camping in general, this we call it the life cycle, where someone would start off in a tent and they'd move on to a pop-up, and then maybe some kind of towable at that point, maybe upgrade their towable, then maybe some kind of motorhome, and then maybe back down to something else when they get older, park model, as they say, in some places. But that was kind of the evolution. Now the camper van, because of the popularity that came with COVID and everything, is now this aspirational type of RV, and so the younger folks out of the gate want to buy one of those, and as Phil said, they're not cheap. It's not the same as going out and buying a Jayco pop-up. It's a lot different in orders of magnitude. So it feels like there's some delay stuff going on there. I don't, and I agree that I'm not sure if campgrounds should make really big adjustments to what's going on right now. In terms of
what about in 5 years if it continues, or 10 years if it continues?
But and that may be the case. I mean, some campgrounds are converting their RV sites to accommodations now. So they're on the ground, people are making on the fly adjustments, and if it does continue, you will see more of it. But I don't think the industry should be too reactionary about it either.
What do you think of all this data from an association perspective and from a conference perspective?
I think as an association, we look more at trends that are, I guess a little bit more longer term. So when you look at something like COVID, obviously that was an anomaly, that was happening during a certain specific time frame. So I guess I would look more at things like, okay, did we make decisions based on that 1 year going crazy, being boom, being huge? Yes, it introduced a lot of new people to camping. But were decisions made based on that boom versus, okay, 2019, where this is kind of more my baseline year that I should be comparing things to. So I think in terms of trends, that's what I would offer there. That's kind of more what we would look at.
Right.
So what would need to...
And I think, Brian, the funny thing, Brian, is with the VIP spaces, even the vans, that's what they want. And I know Tina will know this just because of some of her reservation staff that she's had to work with, but you'll have a beautiful van that could very easily fit into a great small space. They don't want a great small space. They want a big VIP space. That's what they want. And they'll pay more for it, but that's what they want. They want the chair already set up there for them. They want that nice pad. They want the fireplace, the grill, it all ready for me, and I'll pull right on up. And I'm not really concerned about what fits or doesn't fit as far as the vehicle that I'm driving, the RV that I'm driving.
Is that backed up by your data, Scott? Because from what and Ward, correct me if I'm wrong, but from what Ward seemed to imply, those people are staying away from the traditional campsites, right?
Well, we don't really see that.
The van customers, yeah. But I agree with the premiumization.
But is it the same level of premiumization though? Are they still looking for that flat 90-foot long patio site with the furniture, or are they looking for a different level of premiumization because they are clearly in the type of rig they're driving, right? I don't think I know the answer. It's speculation.
Kind of yes and no, Brian, because I think one of the things that you got to look at is they do have a very nice space inside, right? And it's all compartmentalized, but I'm not compartmentalized when you're outside. Now give me that space. Now I want that space, because you can't be confined in a small area forever, especially when you're camping. That's just not what camping is about either. So I do think that those VIP spaces spaces are really important. I will agree, it's very different in the European areas and other areas where maybe land and space is just not as available. But I think, especially where it is, I think they are looking for those nice, spacious places to park.
I think we probably agree. I think it just depends on how each individual park on the micro level defines VIP, right? Like when you say VIP to me, I think what we've had traditionally is VIP in this industry for a long time, which is what I just described. 90-foot pull through, like what? But you can have a VIP site with a lot of outdoor space that isn't the same as that.
Correct. And
So
I believe that's the new VIP space, Brian. The long space is not necessarily what it's all about. They seem to like, and for a better lack of better words, I will say a fatter space. They want wider. They want more. They want more. They want more space to spread out and do their thing. In that group. So it doesn't necessarily have to be like, okay, I just need to make sure that I can get everything that I own parked. It's more about, this is my private space to have my family thing with. And it kind of goes back to what Scott was saying about those folks being, wanting that more private area, and with just those few friends versus 1,000 friends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
that's a little bit more challenging for the way most on a macro level. Obviously, there are exceptions that campgrounds are designed now. That in many cases, looking at the traditional campground that's been built since the 60s, that means taking two sites and making them one, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It definitely can, but it also can teach you how to make use of sort of those, I'll call them border kind of sites, where you've got I've got like a site and a quarter over here, or I've got, this is a little hillside area that I really can't do with anything else. It's a little extra thing, how you can put something around that space, and all of a sudden, instead of a crappy site, now that's your VIP site. And it doesn't necessarily, it just has to look like it's got that extra space.
That's true. That's fair. It's all about the perception of the site and the privacy there. It's the story I tell about, I tell the same story about Ireland. When we went there, we stayed in a container home, and it's an Airbnb that somebody had along the river. It was in the backyard of their house, but you took a path down, and by the time you got there, there was a whole hedge between him and the house, and you knew he was 100 feet away, but there's no way once you forgot about him, you never remembered he was there. You didn't hear anything else. So you're very right there. Ward, we keep getting disconnected. I want to give you a chance to tell us what you do before you get disconnected again.
So it's been a complete disaster. It's a heavy storm here, and I'm losing connection all the time. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Please tell us a little bit about what you have going on for people who don't know you.
Oh no, sorry. My name is Huerta. For the premium campsites. So about the topic today, for example, on terms of pitches for the RVs, I completely agree. We like to upgrade them with private sanitaries, for example, to make them more premium. And this is how we keep on these customers who before maybe wouldn't come into our because our sites are expensive. But again, we think this is the future. Quality is the future, and this is what our brand stands for in terms of differentiation with other brands. We are a franchise. We're a franchise that we operate in 3 countries: Spain, Portugal, and France. And furthermore, I love to discuss more about the premiumization of in terms of pitches, because phenomenon. We had a phenomenon of installing too many accommodations. In the last 2 years, we see a trend of recovering more land to offer more pitches, because the RV business is a booming business. So this is something we've seen, and of course, pitches are much more affordable. And they don't require so many investment, and they don't require so many maintenance. So the biggest business trend in terms of, we see them in recovering pitches, and then of course premiumize. We premiumize these pitches with private barbecues, private sanitaries, private views, private garters. And even, and I know in Croatia, but for example, in Croatia, they are even offering private swimming pools on the pitch.
But
Wow.
wait, that's really what it's all about, though, isn't it? It is that personal VIP
Yeah.
experience. So it can be, I love my dog more than my children, so I want to have a space there. Not me, honey, but
Yeah, thanks.
that they have more. Have more space for the view well, or the other person wants that great river view, or the next person just wants to make sure that I just have a place to cook outside, so that VIP experience is different, right? It needs to be sort of customized for that person, and that's really when you can make that work, right?
Yeah, I mean, we see that. We've seen that in micro doses. In like when we go to trade shows and conferences, like I was in a session that was led by I think Amir Harpaz at Ojai either last year, I think it was last year, and he was we were talking about at the time like just how the early economic picture was having people struggle a little bit with transients even last year because 2024, right, 2025 was down over 2024. Too many years happening all it feels like. But people raised their hands and talked about their unique sites in there. They talked about their shade canopy sites. They talked about their sites where they added, pet playpens, stuff like that. And I raised my hand and said, you guys already have the answer. It's uniqueness, it's differentiation, it's the experience of those sites, because those sites will fill a niche need for an audience that doesn't have that everywhere, and they will come to you as a result. You don't need to reach out to all RVers. You need to pick your niche and grab it and go. It'll be pretty good if you do. So I think that's interesting to see where the future goes with that, and the ability of all this technology and tracking and people getting into marketing, and then obviously AI, and the ability of us to really niche down into our audiences and find what truly resonates with the demographics that are coming to us, the cities that are nearby to us, the people that are going to be pulled out of them or not. And then I think maybe we almost have to go through, and Scott, I'd love your thoughts on this too, like maybe we have to go through, maybe we're a little bit behind Europe, because Europe has always been this more smaller, I don't know if it's Class C, right? But like Class C camper van type market. Maybe we have to go through this phase of like, we're going to build a bunch of accommodations, and then maybe we'll overcorrect to accommodations and go back. By that time, then we'll have enough of a saturation of the camper van audience to make it worthwhile to build something that's different from the traditional pull through.
Yeah, absolutely. I think maybe it was Simon that mentioned this in one of the shows in the past, but the idea that in Europe they tend to build the campground or the park with the experience in mind first, and then start putting in the sites based on that. It's kind of that guest forward mindset. It's a little bit different than not everyone. Obviously, I feel like we've come a long way in terms of campground layout design in the last few years, absolutely. But it's that idea that what is happening? Are we just going to see far fewer of Class A's coming in and fifth wheels, and there's going to be much more of the scale down? If that's so, to kind of go back to what we were talking about a little bit earlier when you asked me about this, Brian, is that maybe that is what happens. Maybe the sites are they're smaller, they're more customized, they're more boutique. It's like that kind of experience for the person to come in and have that versus the idea of you're parking your van in the middle of a site that's designed for a gigantic fifth wheeler. There's a Class A that's towing something behind it that you're kind of swimming in that spot versus something that's really designed on what you have. And I think that's what people really want. It's like to see something and have something this site is for you because you have that type of accommodation, and that to me it feels like that's the appeal. That's kind of the future of where this is headed.
Scott, I love that. I love that. Yeah, I love that name. Boutique site. I want to steal that. Is that okay?
Please do. Have at it.
I love that. I think that is just inspirational. Because that tell every single camp you have, you could do something unique. You could do something fun on this one site that's different than anybody else is going to have, because you have this little piece or this little thing.
when I think they'll get there, like Simon, I'll let you talk in 1 second. I think they'll get there because I think, again, I don't think we're behind Europe because of a bad thing or because we're lagging. I think it's because we have a different type of camper over here we have had for a couple decades, and that's the boomers who have been looking for something that's been consistent and different than what Europe has offered or does offer in many cases, right? Not that they can't go over there and enjoy Europe, but generally speaking. And so I think that has to kind of almost come full circle into this different expectation for these millennials and Gen Zs who are expecting something different for the campgrounds to convert, kind of go full circle. But go ahead, Sam.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same sort of point I was going to make. That I think it's a massive restriction on the American market today, that it's always kind of been designed around having to accommodate a Class A and being able to deal with them, and it really dictates how you do the layout, what type of sites you need to have, the back end pull through. And in Europe, like 90% or more campgrounds you're going to go to are not going to take a Class A. They're just not going to fit, right? So there's a huge difference in that kind of market in the first place. But definitely having a crack at saying, right, okay, this part of the campground, we're still going to accommodate this type of size, but then let's slowly start to change the other side and be a bit more flexible in the design, the layout, more customized, more boutique. But that will take time. I mean, you can't change your market overnight. That's been the way it is in the US for decades.
All right, let's spend the last few minutes here asking each other questions if we see some good stuff comes out besides me asking questions. So Simon, you want to start? Do you have a question for any of our people here?
Yeah, well, I mentioned a couple of results from Croatia and Spain, Ward, that were pretty promising for the summer. So maybe, do you have any indication from your guys' group how it's looking?
Well, it wasn't looking so good this winter when we opened the booking season. We have seen a big trend of last-minute bookings, which we aren't so used to it. So if you ask me that question in the month of April, we would have signed the same results as last year. But now, luckily enough, with the beginning of the summer, we see that everything gets. And so mostly France, because the biggest part in France, we operate 90 parks in France. There, we're getting ahead of our.
Oh, did we lose Ward again? All right, we'll see if he comes back in a second. Hold on to that thought then. Do you have any questions for anybody?
Yeah, I was just wondering, you had mentioned earlier that you had seen a kind of a uptick, or that things were going well in Canada, and I haven't really gotten that same sentiment from our association that we look at. I guess I'm just kind of wondering, is that more state park, local park, or it's not state, but province park, local park?
I mean, I will admit, like, I haven't done the exact studies myself. Anecdotally, I've talked to Kara Sismati, who's the president of the Canadian Camping and RV Association, who is on our show once a month, and then I have regular calls with her because we support the association and some of their marketing efforts and stuff like that. And from what I generally understand, talking to her and some of the other, like, their KOA franchisees, Scott, I think, are up quite a bit in Canada versus their U.S. counterparts. So I think it's just a lot more people stayed home last year. I think a lot more people are staying home, not over 2025 than this year, but that's holding steady. And then the economic picture is also keeping them closer to home. So I think it's just a consequence of less travel outside of Canada means more camping inside of Canada.
Sure. Okay.
I can add to that, Tina, as well. Last Friday, I was on a call with I don't know her title, but she's with the Canadian provincial and territorial parks. And she said that they were up. Not huge, but that thus far in the season that they were looking forward to another season of being at least marginally up a little bit. So they're kind of taking a wait and see. The season starts a little bit later.
Which makes, I guess, sense based on some of the feedback that I had gotten too, because those would be people that would be coming. They're used to some traffic coming from the U.S. coming into their Canadian parks. So I guess that makes sense that there would be that variance there. People just staying there versus coming in. Okay.
Yeah, we do see that too. Like the early anecdotal data I've had in conversations is that the United States people are still coming to Canada. It's just the Canadians and there are still Canadians who are coming, but just not in the same numbers that they did historically.
Okay. Yeah, I'm hearing it like opposite of that actually from the KOAs that I work with. So, okay.
Yeah, I mean, again, macro picture, right?
Right. Yep.
Phil, you have any questions for anybody?
Well, this could probably be a whole show, but one of the things that we're seeing is with the new AI forward searching going on with Google, that you search, for instance, an RV dealership. That's the first thing that comes up, and all this reputation stuff from reviews and things like this, and they're almost scoring the dealership based on the number of Yelp reviews or other reviews that they see on Facebook or elsewhere. What are the campgrounds, Tina, doing to kind of make sure that what's coming up in those AI search results are accurate? Because I know the dealers that I work with are very concerned about that. And it's unfair the way it's being done, because if you're a small dealership and you only have 10 reviews and 8 are positive, you come out great. If you're a large dealer and have, sell 30,000 units a year, sure, you're going to have more, just based on size, you're going to have more negative reviews. How are you guys working through that?
I think education is going to be a huge piece to all of that, because part of it is making sure that what you have out there and published is accurate, that what's being scraped for those AI bots in use is reflecting what you really have in terms of your amenities, and making sure that you are on all the sites that would give you reviews, reaching out to people that give you those negative reviews and trying to correct that in some way, making sure that you keep that communication up and going. But then I also think educating just on, like we have our fall workshops and we have other conventions that come up. And I think those are going to be key classes that we have going forward, just making sure that people are aware of it and then how to combat it a little bit. Because like you said, part of it is some of it's really out of your hands, which stinks. I mean, but just making sure that you're keeping as much accurate information as possible on your website. The pictures are accurate. They're not made up. They're not Chat GPT, they're real. They're real pictures. They're real people having fun that you've gotten a waiver for. We've talked about some of that stuff with legalities and things like that. But yeah, Phil, that's a good question. I feel like all around AI, you're right. We could have a whole conversation on how is that impacting the industry in general. It's tough. Having even, like on your site, now there's options obviously to have a little chat bot, little friend help out with placing reservations or questions that you might have, and are they giving accurate information, or is it something that's just being sourced? Yeah, it's scary. If you ask me, it's scary.
I think it's probably easier for campgrounds, Phil, than it is for anything else, because I think the RV industry is more comparable to, like, let's say, the airlines. No matter how good you set expectations, there's always going to be somebody who complains about the airline in some way or fashion, right? So
we get complaints.
I think your challenge is a little bit more of an uphill climb, but like what I would encourage like any business to do is just, yes, they are heavily weighting reviews, user-generated content. So the answer there is, yeah, if you're a small dealership and you're only selling 10 units, that's a problem, but like try to make sure that all those 10 units, when they come into your dealership, have the correct expectation. They've seen good photos, the service is good, so that the chances that they leave you a good review are higher. And then most people don't leave good reviews when it comes to any business.
Right.
They will go on and scream when they leave bad reviews. So I think it's making sure that not only do as many of those 10 people have a good experience as possible, but I'm somehow encouraging them to leave a review, not incentivizing, but encouraging.
Yeah, we do have like a checklist outside of a lot of our campgrounds in Wisconsin in particular that would include that as part of the checkout process, that you would ask, how was your experience? Oh, would you mind leaving a review? Hopefully it's a positive one. Can I count on a positive review? I mean, just asking that ahead of time before they leave. That might be good for dealerships too.
I mean, you're right. This is a whole show, and we only have less than a minute left, right-ish. We're
Right.
Need to go a couple minutes over here. But generally speaking, I think this is just evolving so fast, Phil, that where we are now is it's not going to stand still. I was reading a study this morning from somebody who mentioned that if a brand, now that you have personalization in Google, you can connect your Gmail and your photos and everything else, and it personalizes your search results just to you. That if Gmail finds a brand that you have emailed with in the past, or you're on their list and it sits in your Gmail inbox, they're 53% more likely to show up in AI interviews for that person. So I think this stuff is going to evolve really quickly, because then what's going to happen is people are going to see that study and then they're going to start spamming everybody under the sun with their emails, thinking that that's going to improve their brand presence. And then, so it's just it's a constant moving target. I think it gets better over time. And eventually what the goal is I think is to deliver the best answer, period, to the consumer. That's always, I think, been Google's goal. They don't care about the RV industry or the campground industry, just the best answer that keeps people coming back to Google. So I think it eventually evens out and hopefully takes out the right way for people who are offering a good dealership experience. We're about out of time, so I want to go around and just let everybody give their final thoughts and then where they can find more information. Lori, you want to start us off?
Sure. Sure. We have, I'll talk about COE. We have the Campground Owners Expo coming up here in December. So you can check out that website, and we would love to connect with some of you guys. Come on over and volunteer to be speakers for us. And that information out there. Good to see you again, Phil.
Awesome. Thanks for being here, Lori. Scott, final thoughts, and where can they find out more about consulting?
I had a question for Phil, and I'll just kind of throw this out there because I saw this headline last week on Toyota having an EV battery that goes 1,100 miles, and knowing that Toyota is entering into the RV market a little bit more, and how that might change the industry a little bit, or if at all. But what the future that might be. I thought that was, and it's not a lithium ion battery either. That was the other part of that. So I thought that was super interesting, and just, I don't know, I'm not a prognosticator, but it just seemed like to me it was a big deal, and it didn't get a lot of attention. But
yeah, there's a lot of thoughts about that. One is a little bit of a look back, because auto manufacturers have got a very checkered past in the RV business. That's just, I mean, you can just Google it and see all the ones that have failed.
Right.
So there's a little, part of the issue is I think the car dealers sell cars, right? That's what they do. And RV dealers sell RVs, and they're selling, an experience. So I think the jury's still out on that. I think the big thing on electric that we've seen is the towing capacity. And once you hook something up to those batteries, where's the towing capacity go? And that seems to be the big bugaboo. Now, hopefully, the battery technology will take off and handle some of that. But I mean, the Ford Lightning was way over promise and under delivered. And so that's why Ford hung that up.
All right, Phil, final thoughts, and where can they learn more about RVDA?
Well, we have a convention coming up too, and we're going to be talking about AI issues as well as just general economic issues at our conference. It's coming up November 12th through the 15th at Paris, Las Vegas. So people who are interested can go to rvda.org to find out more information on that.
Awesome. Thanks for being here, Phil. Simon, final thoughts, and where can they learn more about CampMat?
Yeah, I think just positive signals coming from Europe, at least at the moment. So hope that passes over to the US as well. Yeah, you can find more about us at campmap.com. You could reach us, book a meeting, find information there, or find me on LinkedIn.
All right. Thank you guys for joining us for another episode of MC Fireside Chats. Like I said earlier, we don't have another episode about Wired today. Scott and I are taking the week off. We'll be back next week. We're going to do a deep dive into marketing and some other stuff like that. So until then, we will see you next week, another episode of MC Fireside Chats. Thanks, guys. I appreciate y'all.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.